Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped to share this one with you. We're unpacking a really wild historical deception from way back in 1817. Basically, we're going to look at how a young, runaway servant completely dismantled the massive ego of the British upper class. It's a crazy story, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. How on earth does a servant trick an entire empire? Seriously, picture this. You've got this young, totally exhausted woman who just randomly appears in a tiny English village. She's wrapped in these makeshift exotic robes, which, let's be real, were probably just a bunch of rags roughly stitched together. And she's speaking a language literally no one on the planet has ever heard. And yet, somehow, within just a matter of weeks, she has the wealthiest, most powerful people in London convinced that she is foreign royalty. It is such an unbelievable mystery. Section 1. The Stranger in Almondsbury. A Mystery Arrives.
So let's look at the timeline of her sudden arrival, because things escalated so fast. In April 1817, this completely bewildered woman is found just wandering the streets of the quiet little village of Almondsbury. She doesn't speak a single word of English, and she doesn't seem to recognize even the most basic European customs. Well, just hours later, she gets taken to the grand estate of the local magistrate Samuel Worrell and his wife Elizabeth. And over the next few days, the Worrells become completely obsessed. I mean, they bring in self-proclaimed experts, seasoned world travelers, linguists, the whole shebang. And all of these experts just stand around, stroking their chins, completely baffled by what is actually just a local girl from Devon.
And here is the crucial turning point. Enter the quote-unquote translator. This Portuguese sailor just suddenly appears out of nowhere, and wow, how incredibly convenient, he claims he actually understands her strange dialect. He feeds the Worrells this spectacular story. He says this woman is Princess Caraboo from the island of Javasu in the East Indies. According to him, she was kidnapped by ruthless pirates, managed to escape their ship, and literally swam ashore to safety. I mean, it's straight out of a novel. With this super dramatic backstory, the Worrells buy in entirely. They don't just see a confused stranger anymore. They see a royal guest. They give her the finest room, dress her up in silk, and basically start treating her like an absolute goddess. Section 2. Catching the Javasu Fever. High Society's Willful Blindness.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the execution phase. This is where the long con truly takes off and goes, well, 1817 viral. To keep up the charade, Mary had to create this audaciously complex persona. She started praying to a completely invented deity she called Allah Ta'ala. She showed off this expert precision with a bow and arrow, which just blew the minds of these wealthy crowds. She performed these elaborate, supposedly ancient Javasu rituals right out there in the Worrells' garden. And, this is the kicker, she actually invented a complex, baffling written language made of geometric symbols that totally stumped the local scholars. Word spread like wildfire. Newspapers all over London picked it up, and high society folks were traveling for days just to catch a glimpse of her. But you have to wonder, why did they fall for it so easily? Well, it was the ultimate social win. Think about modern-day influencers or how obsessed people are with exclusivity today. Honestly, human nature really hasn't changed. The British elite back then were absolutely obsessed with status, class, and lineage. They actively craved this exotic figure to admire and gossip about at their parties. Hosting a foreign princess was a massive social flex. So society willfully blinded itself to any red flags because this whole fantasy appealed directly to their own vanity. They were basically willing participants in their own deception.
Section 3. The Unmasking of Mary. The Truth from Bristol. Because, like all great deceptions, the House of Cards eventually has to fall. The whole thing came crashing down through the Bristol connection. Bristol was this neighboring city, incredibly close to where all this royal fuss was taking place. A lodging house owner named Mrs. Neal just happened to read the newspaper descriptions of the famous Princess Caraboo, and she instantly recognized the physical description and the really peculiar behaviors. She realized this wasn't an exotic royal from across the globe, this was her former servant. The irony of how geographically close Mary was to her past is just staggering, right? The princess was actually just Mary Baker, a runaway girl from Devon who had a history of assuming different identities just to escape severe poverty. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast of what the Worrells were about to face. Imagine the sheer whiplash. On one side, you've got the fantasy, Princess Caraboo of Javasu. Regal, exotic, speaking a mystical tongue, the absolute darling of the British press. On the flip side, the harsh truth. Mary Baker of Devon, a desperate servant girl, fleeing a life of grueling hard labor. The reality check for high society was about to be absolutely brutal. So the Worrells finally confront her with Mrs. Neal's testimony, and the grand illusion just shatters instantly. That exotic Java Sioux language vanished into thin air. In its place, Mary confessed to the entire scheme, and she did it in a thick, working-class Devon accent. She admitted she made the whole thing up, the language, the rituals, the pirate story, the deities, all of it, out of pure desperation and, honestly, a pretty amazing natural talent for acting. The Worrells were completely humiliated. I mean, they hadn't just been tricked, they had been the main promoters of a massive lie. Overnight, they became the absolute laughingstock of the entire country.
Section 4, The Legacy of Caraboo, The Price of Audacity.
So, what happens after the biggest con of the century gets exposed? Let's trace Mary's anticlimactic but honestly fascinating post-con life. Now, most people in 1817 would have been thrown straight into a dark, miserable prison for a deception like this. But the public actually found the whole thing so incredibly entertaining that they felt this weird affection for her. Step 1. The Worrells were so desperate to avoid a massive, highly public trial that would further ruin their reputation, they actually paid for Mary's passage to America just to get her out of the country. Step 2. She gets to Philadelphia and actually tries to perform her Princess Caraboo act on stage, though, it never quite captures the magic of her original con. And finally, step 3, the ultimate downgrade. She eventually heads back to England, settles down in Bristol, and makes a modest living selling leeches to the local infirmary. Literally selling leeches. Quite the career pivot from international royalty, wouldn't you say?
1864. That is the year Mary Baker died. She passed away as a quiet, poor woman and was buried in an unmarked grave. It's a really humble, quiet end for a woman who once held the full attention and adoration of the British elite right in the palm of her hand. Yet despite that quiet passing, she left behind this massive, enduring legacy that completely exposes the fragile nature of class systems. It turns out a crown can be made of gold or it can be made of lies. So what should we really take away from all this? Mary Baker completely played the world's most powerful elite with nothing more than a made-up language, a bow and arrow, and just an immense amount of confidence. I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Was she a brilliant artist performing an absolute masterclass in psychology, or just a dishonest criminal taking advantage of gullible hosts? And even more importantly, what does her wild success truly say about the illusion of royalty and status? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the stories you're told, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.